Hare Krishna, I welcome all of you to our new series of reading Srila Prabhupada's book line by line. Here we'll just read Srila Prabhupada's book, and I welcome all of you to join our sessions regularly so that we can start and complete all his books, at least the small books together. And today we'll start from category 1, like small books of Srila Prabhupada. So today we'll start with On the Way to Krishna book. We'll read in English. So first to the Mangalacharan. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वतीदेवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणि निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणि जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि श्री गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे. Now I'm sharing my screen and we will read it together. Okay? I hope it's visible to all of you. Okay? Let's start. So, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada on the way to Krishna. You can here see beautiful picture of beautiful picture of Krishna. Here are Srila Prabhupada and another beautiful picture of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. Start with the first chapter, through way to happiness. Through way to happiness. Every one of us is searching after happiness, but we do not know what real happiness is. We see so much advertised about happiness, but practically speaking, we see so few happy people. This is because so few people know that the platform of real happiness is beyond temporary things. It is the real happiness that is described in Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Happiness is generally perceived through our senses. A stone, for instance, has no senses and cannot perceive happiness and distress. Developed consciousness can perceive happiness and distress more intensely than undeveloped consciousness. Trees have consciousness, but it is not developed. So, trees may stand for a long time in all kinds of weather, but they have no way of perceiving miseries. If a human being were asked to stand like a tree only for 3 days or even less, he would not able to tolerate it. The conclusion is that every living being feels happiness or distress according to the degree of development of his consciousness. Okay, the first important point here is everyone is searching after happiness, but we do not know what real happiness is. And the real happiness described in Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. And here the conclusion is that every living being feels happiness and distress according to the degree of development of their consciousness. The happiness that we are experiencing in the material world is not real happiness. If one asks a tree, "Are you feeling happy?" the tree, if it could, might say, yes, I'm happy, standing here all year. I'm enjoying the wind and snowfall very much, etc. This may be enjoyed by the tree, but for the human being is a very low standard of enjoyment. There are different kinds and grades of living entities, and their conceptions and perceptions of happiness are also of all different types and grades. Although one animal may see that another animal is being slaughtered, he will go right on chewing grass. For he was no knowledge that to understand that he may be the next. He is thinking that he is happy, but at the next moment he may be slaughtered. In this way, there are different degrees of happiness, yet all of them. What is the higher happiness? Shri Krishna tells Arjuna, Sukham Atyantikam Tadvat Buddhi Graham Atindriyam Veti Yatra na Chaibayam Stitash Chalati Tattvataha. In that joyous state, means samadhi, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. Bhagavad Gita 6.21. Buddhi means intelligent. Intelligence. One has to be intelligent if he wants to enjoy. Okay, first we have to be intelligent, then we can enjoy. Animal do not have really developed intelligence and so cannot enjoy life as a human being can. The hands, nose, the eyes, and other sense organs and all the bodily parts may be present on a dead man, but he cannot enjoy. Why not? The enjoying energy, the spiritual spark has left, and therefore the body has no power. If one looks further into the matter with a little intelligence, he can understand that it was not the body that was enjoying at all, but the small spiritual spark that was within. Although one may think that he is enjoying by the bodily sense organs, the real enjoyer is that spiritual spark. What is that spiritual spark? That is our soul. That is us, soul. The spiritual spark always has the potency of enjoyment, but it is not always manifest due to being covered by the material tabernacle. Although we may not be aware of it, it is not possible for the body to experience enjoyment without the presence of this spiritual spark. If a man is offered the dead body of a beautiful woman, will he accept it? No, because the spiritual spark has moved out of the body. Not only was it enjoying within the body, but it was maintaining the body. When that spark leaves, the body simply deteriorates. Okay? It follows that if the spirit is enjoying, it follows that if the spirit is enjoying, it must have its senses also. Otherwise, how can it enjoy? The Vedas confirm that the spirit soul, although atomic in size, is the actual enjoying agent. It is not possible to measure the soul, but it is not to say that it is without measurement. An object may seem to us to be no longer than a point and may seem to have no length or width, but when we preserve it under a microscope, we can see that it has been both length and width. Similarly, the soul also has its dimensions, but we cannot perceive them. When we buy a suit, a dress, it is made to fit the body. The spiritual spark must have form. Otherwise, how it is the material body has grown to be accommodated. The conclusion is that the spiritual spark is not impersonal. Okay, soul is not impersonal. It has a form. It is an actual person. God is an actual person, and the spiritual spark being a fragmental part of Him. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that all living and non living things are the part and parcel of Krishna Himself. That's why the spiritual spark that we called soul is also a fragmental part of Him, part of Krishna. So it is also a person. If the Father has personality and individuality, the Son also has them. And if the Son has them, we can conclude that the Father has also them. So, how can we, as sons of God, assert our personality and individuality and at the same time deny them to our Father, the Supreme Lord? Okay, how can we say that we have a form? We are not impersonal, but God is impersonal. How it is possible? It's not possible, na? Because we are part and parcel of Him. If He is nothing, then how can we be something? Atindriyam means that we have to transcend these material senses before before we can appreciate real happiness. Ramante yogino nante Satyananda Chid Atmani. Sorry for my Sanskrit pronunciation. I'm very bad in pronouncing Sanskrit words. Sorry for it. The yogis who are aspiring after spiritual life are also tasting enjoyment by focusing on the spiritual within. If there is no pleasure, if there is no enjoyment, then what is the point of going to so much trouble to control the senses? What kind of pleasure are the yogis releasing releasing if they are taking so much trouble? What pleasure is ananta that pleasure is ananta, endless. How is this the spiritual soul is eternal and the supreme lord is eternal. Therefore, reciprocation of their loving exchanges is eternal. One who is actually intelligent will refrain from the flickering sensual enjoyment of this material body and fix his enjoyment in spiritual life. This participation in spiritual life with the Supreme Lord is called Rasa Lila. We have often heard of Krishna's Rasa Lila with the cowherd girls in Vrindavan. That is not like ordinary exchanges that take place between these material bodies. Rather, it is an exchange of feelings through spiritual bodies. One has to be somewhat intelligent to understand this. For a policeman, we cannot who cannot understand what the real happiness is, seeks happiness in this material world. In India, there is a story of a man who did not know what sugarcane was and was told that it was very sweet to chew. Oh, what does it look like? He asked. It looks just like a bamboo rod. Someone said. So the foolish man began to chew all kinds of bamboo rods. How can he begin to experience the sweetness of the sugarcane? Similarly, we are trying to get happiness and pleasure, but we are trying for them by chewing this material body. Therefore, there is no happiness and no pleasure. Okay? For the time being, there may be some little feeling of pleasure, but that is not actual pleasure, for it is temporary. It is like a show of lightning which we may see flashing in the sky that may momentarily seem like lightning, But the real lightning is beyond that because the person does not really know what happiness is. He deviates from real happiness. The process for establishing oneself in real happiness is this process of Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness, we can gradually develop a real intelligence and naturally enjoy releasing spiritual happiness as we may we make spiritual progress. As we begin to release spiritual happiness, we proportionally abandon material happiness. Okay. As we make progress in understanding the absolute truth, we naturally become detached from the false happiness. So, when we get higher test, we leave the lower test. If somehow or other one is promoted to that stage of Krishna consciousness, what is the result? Yam lavda chaparam lavam manyate nadhikam tatah yashmin stito na dukkhena guru napi vichalayate. Upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never second, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. Bhagavad Gita 6.22. When one attains that stage, other achievements appear insignificant. In this material world, we are trying to achieve so many things: riches, women, fame, beauty, knowledge, etc. But as soon as we are situated in Krishna consciousness, we think, oh, no achievement is better than this. Krishna consciousness is so potent that a little taste can save one from the greatest danger. As one begins to release the taste of Krishna consciousness, he begins to see other so called enjoyments and attainments as flat and tasteless. And if one is situated firmly in Krishna consciousness, the greatest danger cannot disturb him. There are so many dangers in life because the material world is a place of danger. We tend to close our eyes to this, and because we are foolish, we try to adjust to these dangers. We may have many dangerous moments in our lives, but if we are training ourselves in Krishna consciousness and preparing ourselves to go home back to Godhead, will not care for them. Our attitude will then be dangers come and go, so let them happen. It is very difficult to make this kind of adjustment as long as one is on the materialistic platform and is identifying with the gross body, which is composed in perishable elements. But the more one advances in Krishna consciousness, the more he becomes free from bodily designations and this material entanglement. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the material world is compared to a great ocean. Within this material universe, there are millions and billions of planets floating in space. And we can just imagine how many Atlantic and Pacific oceans are there. In fact, the whole material universe is likened to a great ocean of misery and an ocean of birth and death. In order to cross this great ocean of nations, a strong boat is needed. And that strong boat is the lotus feet of Krishna. We should immediately get aboard that boat. We should not hesitate thinking that Krishna's feet are very small. The whole universe is simply resting on his leg. For one who takes shelter of his feet, it is said that the material universe is no more significant than a puddle of water found in the impression of a calf's hoofprint. There is certainly no difficulty in crossing over such a small puddle. Tam vidyat dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samjitam. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Bhagavad Gita 6.23. We are entangled in this material world due to uncontrolled senses. The yoga process is meant to control these senses. If somehow we can manage to control the senses, we can turn our face to actual spiritual happiness and make our lives successful. स निश्चयेन युक्तव्यो योगनिर्विण्णचेतसा सङ्कल्पप्रभावान् कामांस् त्यक्त्वा सर्वन् अशेषतः मनशिवेन्द्रियग्रामं विनियम्य समान्ततः शनैः शनैः उपरमेद बुद्ध्या धृति घृतया आत्मा संस्थं मन कर्तव्य न किंचिद अपि चिन्तयेत् यतो यतो निश्चलाति मनश्चञ्चलम् अस्थिरं तथा ततो नियम्यतेत् आत्मनि एव वशं नयेत्. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith. One should abandon without expectations all material desires born of false ego and thus control all the senses on all sides of the mind. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. From whatever and wherever the mind wanders, due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Bhagavad Gita 6.124 to 6. The mind is always disturbed. It is going sometimes this way and sometimes that way. By yoga practice, we literally track the mind to Krishna consciousness. The mind strays from Krishna consciousness to so many exterior objects because from time immemorial, life after life, that has been our practice. Due to this, there may be great difficulty in the beginning when one tries to fix his mind in Krishna consciousness. But these difficulties can all be overcome. It is because the mind is agitated and not fixed on Krishna that it goes from one thought to another. For instance, when we are engaged in work, memories of events that happened 10, 20, 30, or 40 years ago may suddenly come to our mind for no apparent reason. These thoughts come from our subconsciousness, and because we are always rising, the mind is always agitated. If we agitate a lake or a pond, all the more from the bottom comes to the surface. Similarly, when the mind is agitated, so many thoughts arise from the subconscious that have been stored there over the years. If we do not disturb a pond, the mud will settle to the bottom. This yoga process is the means to quit the mind and allow all these thoughts to settle. For this reason, there are so many rules and regulations to follow in order to keep the mind from becoming agitated. If we follow the rules and regulations, gradually the mind will come under control. There are so many don'ts and so many do's. And if one is serious about training the mind, he has to follow them. If he acts whimsically, what is the possibility of the mind being controlled? When the mind is finally trained to the point when it will think of nothing but Krishna, it will attain peace and we will become very tranquil. Prashanta manasham he enam yoginam shukham uttamam उपैति शान्तराजसं ब्रह्मभूतं अकालं मशम्. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest happiness. By virtue of his identity with Brahma, he is liberated, his mind is peaceful, his passions are quieted, and he is freed from sin. Bhagavad Gita 6.27. The mind is always concocting objects for happiness. I'm always thinking this will make me happy or that will make me happy. Happiness is here, happiness is there. In this way, the mind is taking us anywhere and everywhere. It is as thought we are riding on a chariot behind an unbridled horse. We have no power over where we are going, but we can only sit in horror and watch helplessly. As soon as the mind is engaged in the Krishna consciousness process, specifically by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, then the wild horses of the mind will gradually come under our control. We must engage in Krishna's service every moment of our lives in order to keep the restless and turbulent mind from dragging us from one object to another in a vain search for happiness in temporary material world. युञ्जम् एवं सद्येतमानं योगी विगतकल्मषः सुखेन ब्रह्म सम्प्रशम् अत्यन्तं सुखम् अश्नुति. Steady in the self, being freed from all material contamination, the yogi achieves the highest perfectional stage of happiness in touch with the Supreme Consciousness. Krishna serves as a patron for one who is devoted to him. When one is in difficulty, his patron saves him. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the real friend of all living entity and we have to revive our friendship with him. The method of reviving this friendship is the process of Krishna consciousness. By practice of Krishna consciousness, mundane passionate hankering will come to a stop. This passionate hankering keeps us divorce from Krishna. Krishna is within us and is waiting for us to turn to Him. But we are too busy passionately eating the fruit of the tree of material desire. This passionate compulsion this passionate compulsion to enjoy these fruits must stop and we must situate ourselves in our real identity as Brahman, pure spirit. So, chapter 1 is completed today, and tomorrow again we'll read on the way to Krishna book and start with chapter 2. So, thank you so much for joining, and whoever is hearing till the end, kindly comment Hare Krishna and again we'll meet tomorrow. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुवैवच पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. जगद्गुरु Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much for joining. Hare Krishna.